Hello and welcome to another episode of Sonic Touch, the show dedicated to music making on touch devices. I'm Nick Batt.
And I'm Gaz Williams.
So the reason our frequency's gone down a little bit is because Gaz has been away, been in Japan. So has there been much evidence of iPads in Japan?
I didn't see that many of them, to be honest. I did see lots of people using iPhones, though. That certainly seemed to be the smartphone of choice when I was over there. So, but
it's probably size, isn't it? Because Japanese are famously very fond of kind of small, portable things, right?
Yeah. But I tell you what, did happen. I did actually get recognised in Japan for my Sonic Touch.
No way, really?
Yes.
Well, somebody came up to you and said, are you from the show?
Yes.
Do we give him a shout out?
Absolutely, yeah. Soul Sonic from Third Coast Kings, and what a great band. They were playing at Fuji Rock Festival. So
awesome. So what we're going to have a look at first is a couple of apps from Jordan Rudess. So what are we looking at, Gaz?
Wizdom Music, Jordan Rudess is a company that releases apps for iOS devices, have released two apps in fairly quick succession. The first of which we'll look at is called Tachyon. Now Tachyon is a very simple synthesizer. It's quite simple, but it has got quite a nice feature.
Looks nice.
Yeah, and what happens is, as we touch it, we can see the star field has kind of changed to look like a piano. But as I move my fingers up, see it form.
Oh, it's a pretty violin.
Yeah. So it's quite a simple instrument in that there's not a lot of complexity to it, but it's very musical and it's very kind of responsive to the touch, and it's about looking for the sounds in between the sounds in between sounds kind of thing, this morph thing. And because it's polyphonic, each of the touches is in a different part of the morph. So for instance, down here you can hear it's more sounding like a piano when I'm touching with one finger.
So it looks very beautiful, and it's got the same sort of sliding paradigm that Jordan Rudess has kind of developed in a lot of his other apps. Can you get the grid showing? I mean, did you get the same sort of thing?
Yeah, you can. You've got these little menus that open up here. So I mean, display. I could have lines.
That's more familiar.
Yeah, and then if I was to increase the range maybe 3 octaves, we can see there's more lines there indicating where the notes are. We can lock pitch, or we can, if we wanted it to gliss between notes, we can turn off the lock pitch there. Here we can choose what sound we've got on the top. Here we choose what sound we've got on the bottom, and we've got some effects. Other than that, that's it. It's very simple.
Can you not edit? Can you edit the sound, or can you do?
No. It's there's quite a big preset list of sounds but by and large it is just very simple, very straightforward.
So, final thoughts? Good app?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it doesn't do a huge deal. We tend to expect things to have all this interactivity between other apps, background audio and, MIDI in the background. And
this doesn't have any kind of MIDI stuff whatsoever,
No,
right?
It's just a standalone, very simple synthesizer, but it's got a musicality to it and a really good sound that makes it, fun, good.
And that's the thing. I mean, Jordan is still continuing to pioneer the touch interface rather than trying to integrate all of these kind of other external paradigms. He's just going for the fingers on the screen kind of approach.
That's right. But good. I mean, this does lead us on to the second release by Wizdom, which is called SpaceWiz, and this is the most peculiar synthesizer, I think. One of the most interesting and unique synths I've seen released so far on the iOS. Shall we have a look?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll load in SpaceWiz. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a very unusual thing. It's kind of like a solar system. Each of the planets has its own sound and its own orbit around the sun. And the planets only sound when particles hit the planet. Now, we can...
Trippy.
Yeah. I can bring particles in by dragging my finger in, and when these particles collide, they'll make sounds. But also, if we look in the master here, chaos, when chaos turned on, it's just generating particles randomly. If I was to turn that off, then the only sounds that we'll hear are the particles which are generated by my finger. And the spheres of the planets, as they rotate, they have like a different musical kind of note depending on where the world is.
It seems kind of pretty abstract, frankly.
It is, but what you can also have though is you can have like a synthesizer which overlays it as well, which is just like a monophonic synthesizer. So I could play it here, but if I go into the main screen, so I've got a synthesizer, but as I play the synth, it's also generating these particles which are kind of flying off and bumping into the planets, and then then that kind of creates this almost semi-random, deliberate approach. If I hit tonality, I can easily change the key and the scale, and then that sort of, and so forth. I can just keep changing them. Almost like with a chaos pad type sort of approach, with a lockdown scale.
It seems like it's, it sounds very good, that's the one thing I would say. I mean, you can hear there's a very full range to it. So can you get any kind of real meaningful musical stuff out of it?
It's really enjoyable. At first I was thinking, God, this is a kind of a novelty, but the more I spent time with it, the more I realised that the little nuances of the way that you interact with it is quite pleasing. Regarding how serious music, I just don't know. I mean, you can make an audio mix down of what you do, which you could then import in as maybe as a bed to a track or some sort of sound effect thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, because you can see that there's a lot of depth and kind of thought and just graphic design and stuff gone into it. So I mean, there's a hell of a lot of things you can do. I mean, what's this here? Some sort of matrix?
Yeah, it's a modulation matrix, and Jordan actually recommends just being really random with it. So as you're doing stuff, it can create all sorts of extra sort of modulations. Put the chaos back on, yeah. Turn the synth off. And yeah, so you can zoom in and out to choose how big your playing field then is.
Wow. It's sort of mesmerising, really, isn't it? But is it a bit like you can lose quite a lot of your day on it, really?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it really am struggling to sort of decide whether this is to be treated as a serious instrument or just a sonic plaything. But I guess it doesn't really matter. It is what it is, and it's a unique and interesting thing, which I guess is the bottom line.
So, cost-wise, do we know how much it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the cheapest. It's £6.99. I think that's around $10.
So, a reasonable amount. Not going to break the bank, but not one of the cheapest applications.
No, and I wonder just what the longevity of it would be. But
I can't take my eyes off it. I just keep kind of like gazing down to it. It's very...
Yeah. So I mean, as I say, the more time I've spent with it, the more I've started to really enjoy it more.
I guess the thing where I see it be useful, you could generate these kind of large textures that you could maybe have more focused musical ideas on top or underneath or around it that you could play maybe with other synthesizers or whatever. So you can mix down to audio and stuff on it, right?
Yeah. From the master here, we've got a record AIFF file, and so it's currently recording, and then so I mean it's
right. That's from Wizdom Music, available now. But coming up next, in case you've been living under a rock recently, you can't have failed to see that Auria from Wave Machine Labs has come out. So Gaz, what would you say Auria was?
Well, Auria is, it purports to be anyway, the first fully featured DAW for the iPad. So what that means is like a complete recording environment, like equivalent to something like Logic or Pro Tools.
And that's kind of mix, edit, record, multi-track record. In fact, there's a video from band Why So White, which I will play now, and you get an idea of what they were doing with it.
We came here because it was available to us and we wanted to sort of get off the beaten path, take this out into an environment that's never really been used before. We are recording a song using Auria.
Auria is the first of its kind. It's a mobile professional recording software for the iPad. get to bring the recording studio to us. I mean, we recorded in that barn back there, which is amazing. I mean, we're in beautiful Michigan right now. Usually you have to pay for studio time, pay an engineer to run it. We get to be the engineer and the studio, and it's all right there.
So, looking at that video, it would seem that Auria is kind of your dream ticket if you want to do multi-track recording, editing and mixing in the field just on your iPad. I wonder if that really is the case. Gaz, what do you think? I mean, we've both had copies of it, we've messed around with it, we've looked at it separately. Let's look at it together, shall we?
Yeah, let's do so. Let's load it. Okay, so it takes a small moment to load in.
Yes, we should say at this point, I mean, it is quite resource hungry. It's going to take quite a lot of CPU power, and you know what it's doing in this sort of puny processor for this effectively is quite astonishing, right?
Auria can, if you're using an iPad 2 or the newer iPad, can run up to 48 tracks. If you're using an iPad 1, it'll do 24 tracks. And the other difference is the iPad 1 won't do latency compensation on the aux buses. So I think they're really trying to get people to sort of...
So this is kind of the mix with, this is the demo session from the same band, right?
Yeah, the demo session. And we can see that Auria is just comprises of two main screens. We've got our mixer screen, and then if we go here, we've got our kind of track view screen. So it looks very much like a Pro Tools kind of thing.
So this is just audio we should get, there's no MIDI going on here whatsoever, right?
Yeah, it's purely an audio sequencer, yeah. No MIDI functionality at all. So if we go back to the mixer a moment, we can see what we've got 8 subgroups, so we can route any, so we've got like our drums in a group here, vocals as a group, background vocals as a group. So just a single channel to operate what is multiple channels. We can see we've got 2 auxiliary sends. We've also got inserts. And if we look at the inserts, now this is one of the most interesting parts of the software. This is a PSP channel strip. This one comes as standard, but you can go into the Auria store, and then if I was to look in plugins here, we can see here's the other plugins like Fab Filter, who are a great company. I mean, they do an EQ here, but see, $29.99. These plugins aren't really cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's an expensive. Well, I mean, we say expensive. It's comparable, or perhaps a bit less than you'd pay for full VST plugins if you were buying them for your DAW that was hosted on your laptop, right?
Yeah. So, but it's interesting because this is the first iPad software that is open to third-party VSTs. Now, the VSTs, it won't just run any VST. They have to be specially ported for this format.
There's an extra word. So we're not going to just see everything turning up on it. But that's a very good distinction. So already we're talking about a sort of paradigm to those of us who perhaps are used to using full-scale DAWs on our laptops and desktops. This is what they're kind of aiming for.
So we've got like the other bus groups here have got a different sort of plug-in strip. And we can look at, this is on the master bus here, and we've got like this PSP, it's got an EQ, a bus presser, which is like a mix bus compressor, and a limiter there.
So we've got a before and after?
Yeah, so let's try the track without it. Let's kick in the EQ. Some top end. Let's drop in the compressor. Let's get a bit pumpy, rumpy. And a limiter on the end there as well. So if I bypass the whole chain.
I know what I prefer. So let's have a listen to see what's going on here, right?
Okay, so double tap on stop takes us to the beginning. Let's push play, and we're going to go to the edit view here. So we can pan through the tracks.
It's sort of obviously thinking about that while you're doing it, right?
It's a tiny bit laggy, and that's one of the things I really am not that keen on with it. You know, it just feels slow. This is a big project, mind. There's a lot of stuff going on, so that might contribute to that. But from a kind of editing point of view, what we would do is, if we were using a regular DAW, we might have like a right-click option with a bunch of sort of editing tools.
Key commands and that sort of thing.
With this, pretty much most things involves having to stop the playback, going into the edit, selecting, say, in this case, I want to select that one, and then I want to split it like that. once I've split it, if I click at the bottom here, I can I can do this kind of thing, resize it, or this at the top, if I click, I can drag fades, which is cool. Which is pretty cool. These are
Can you does it snap and stuff? So if you've got a master tempo, it allows you to have a grid.
Yeah, we can turn the snap on here, and then that will give us snap points, theoretically.
Right, got you.
Yeah. And then,
so I mean, this looks all kind of very familiar. I mean, but it does look a little bit, perhaps a bit more painful to operate than perhaps if you had a mouse and key commands and the precision that you can get and the speed, right?
I think we're now tapping into what I think is the real sort of drawback of this particular piece of software, in that it's trying to copy the desktop or laptop paradigm of DAW, rather than
do it in a different way.
In a different way. And there's a bunch of issues that you quickly kind of come upon. One of which is the fact that, having to always go into a menu, rather than having all your kind of dedicated key commands, slows down your workflow somewhat. Also, it's you maybe have an expectation that it's going to be able to do a whole bunch of things, and when you realize that it doesn't, you sort of think, now, like, I should maybe explain. For instance, if I was to kind of cut a little section of something and I wanted to sort of make repeats of it, then it would be a question of selecting the thing that you want, going into edit, duplicate, and then if I wanted to do it again, it would be select, edit, duplicate, etc., edit. Duplicate.
Right, so again, we're it's almost like a victim of the touch interface rather than using it rather than it being an asset, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I think this is kind of something that you kind of notice when you start using it, that it's like some things are quite nice, but some things are a step backwards.
The other thing that it can do, obviously, is multi-track record, and that's quite a big deal, I think. I mean, that's something that there aren't really many things that can do that at all. So, I mean, I think in the demo video, they talk about being able to record, is it up to 18 channels via one of the PreSonus interfaces? So that's quite significant. Do you know what the record format is?
So if I was to create a new project, one of the things that is interesting is that in our opening options, we can choose sample rates of 44, 48K or 96K, and that's kind of cool because that's the first time we've seen those sample rates being selectable natively from the iPad.
And presumably you can get this audio in and out and sort of bring it into your own DAW environment?
Yeah, it supports the AAF format, which is like a multimedia standard.
I guess that's files plus an XML kind of situation, right?
That's right. So, and then we can do that we can export AAF to Dropbox. So then you'd then import the AAF project into your Pro Tools or your, Logic or Cubase. One of the things, if you're recording multi-channel audio, especially at 96K, that's just going to eat up your available storage space. And if you've just got like a 16 gig iPad or even a 32 gig one,
it's going to run out.
Pretty quick. So in a way,
I mean, and also I suppose the thing that this works is great. But if you sort of know that you're running like a laptop or a desktop that will not break. I mean, if you've got a whole bunch of people in a room and you want to record them, you don't want to mess around. You don't want things going wrong. I'm not saying that this will go wrong, but I think it's fair to say that this is at the edge of what is probably technically possible with the current processor technology. I mean, it may be a little bit better on the iPad 3, right?
Well, yes, I'm sure we haven't got one of those to try, but just in our little experiments, we've had numerous crashes from doing things as, innocent as just pressing undo a few times. And,
Yeah.
This is a version 1
that's true.
release, so maybe we can allow them a little bit of slack with that, but, it has to be utterly robust.
So I think perhaps in summary, what we should say is it's a fantastic sort of emulation of a professional audio recording environment. You will need additional audio hardware to get the most out of it. And if you want multi-track stuff, astonishing. But perhaps if you're talking about something where it's in a mission critical situation, or you're very used to working in a fully featured DAW with sort of no display lag and no real CPU limitations, then it's going to be, you know, it's perhaps not something that's going to immediately make you feel like it's the answer to all your prayers.
And to be honest, my bottom line is I've not found it that much fun to use.
Right.
So, and I think when you're talking with iPad apps and stuff, you know, you kind of need that. You need that. Like if you're using GarageBand on the iPad, for instance, now that's in no way it can compete in like track counts and a whole bunch of. But GarageBand is really good fun to use. It uses the touchscreen idiom really well, and it's an enjoyable experience. Now in my experience so far, I've not found it to be particularly enjoyable. Maybe if I was to use it a lot more, I would kind of get a little bit more au fait with it. Maybe I would know a little bit more about how much time to leave it between things, you know, expectation. But right now, I'm just finding it a little bit of a chore, I'm afraid.
It's about, what was it, $50?
Yeah, $49.99, 35 UK pounds.
So, you know, it's an expensive application in some respects. I mean, when you consider that you can buy, say, Reaper, which is PC or Mac, for about 60 quid. So it's a bit,
40,
it's a bit more expensive. I mean, we're starting to see perhaps that those comparisons, but you know, it's worth a try if you think it's going to solve your immediate problems, perhaps.
Yeah, and I would also say actually, if you were only creating stuff within the iPad and you were creating little bits like riffs in Animoog or loops or drum tracks in DM1, and you wanted to have a piece of software which you could rope them all in together and arrange them and mix them, then I don't think there's a better choice than Auria for that. So that's worth maybe bearing in mind.
Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Next week we're going to take a look at a couple more synths, and
we're going to try and crack the riddle of class compliancy.
But for now, that was Sonic Touch. Thanks for watching. See you later.